Showbiz transformed from silver screens to silicon circuits. AI is reshaping the entertainment business, changing the spectacle as we know it. Join us at Showbiz Transformed, how AI is reshaping the entertainment business.
We're going to break down all things business, money, finance as it pertains to AI in the entertainment industry. I have amazing panelists here with me, but before I kick things off, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Heidi Chung. I'm a media analyst and correspondent for Variety Intelligence Platform, and we are the subscription-based extension of Variety.com. We dig into the biggest trends driving the media and tech industries, and we put out in-depth reports, daily short-form pieces, videos, you name it. So to kick this off, I do want to showcase some of the data that we have from VIP, if we can cue that up. Okay, while we wait for that to get loaded up, let's go around the horn here and get some introductions from our lovely panelists. Shane?
My name is Shane Kelly. I've been in a lot of different spaces and places. Spent about a decade doing film, finance, production, and distribution in New York City as part of the Green Street Film Center. So for those of you who were in the 2000s in Tribeca, I was right there. Helped finance about 20 films. I did a few $100 million at the box office and really dug in there, right, on the content side. Spent the next decade doing tech entrepreneurship and tech investing. So running syndicates, running an angel group, running a fund that was using data science to solve the bias problem in venture capital, right? So think of it as kind of the Bridgewater for venture. So I was doing that. So really leaning in on tech entrepreneurship, allocating capital into tech startups, which was just a delight. And now the last few years has really been around combining those two elements, right? So finding new ways to build entrepreneurial ecosystems across media and tech. So my company today, Cinematica Labs, we build mentor communities that support entrepreneurs that are building new kinds of ventures, right? So what does that mean? We're doing a media accelerator for literally journalists and publishers to go and build their business. So treating media entrepreneurs as true entrepreneurs, right? And really supporting them in adopting the technologies of today. And then we also partnered with Pharrell Williams' Black Ambition to run a program where we support, provide a mentorship experience for 242 entrepreneurs last year. We'll support about 350 this year through that program and others. So that's what we do today. And then, and then my night job, I teach venture capital at USC, where my students serve as the investment committee and literally writing 50K checks into tech startups.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennie.
Hello. I am nowhere near as impressive at all. My name is Jennie Zeiher. I am president of Rising Sun Pictures. I've been with the company for about, thank you team. I've been with the company for 15 years. Recently we were acquired by a private equity company, and we've got sister studios. We've got an umbrella company called Pitch Black. We've got our sister studios, Folks VFX. We've got Fuse VFX, and we've got El Ranchito, and they're all represented here today, which is wonderful. I have a background again in tech. I was actually a network engineer. That was my initial career. I then moved on to immersive cinema back when it was not as cool as it is today. And 15 years ago, I joined Rising Sun, and I am now lucky enough to be president. And you would have met my our co-founder on the last panel, Tony Clark. And really excited to be here. And I really wanted to call out Todd and the AILA team, because it's facilitating a conversation that really needs to be had, because there's a lot of fear in the world right now. Coming from a tech background, change is normal, and this is normal, and we need to be able to reduce the fear and actually have a conversation about it.
Thank you, Jen.
Hi, I'm Jen Laraya. I call myself a technotainment attorney because I practice in technology and entertainment. I've worked mostly on the in-house side, starting at Yahoo. I've also worked for CBS Interactive, Mandalay Digital Group, Red Bull Media House, Disney Interactive, and I'm proud to say I was part of the biggest bankruptcy in LA history at Amped Mobile. Fun fact, if you Google my name, since I'm Jen with a GH, you'll find I'm actually a 23rd century human that was aboard a Star Trek cruiser under the direction of Captain Kirk himself. That's the advantages of working for an animation company when they're looking for names to add to rosters in the latest graphic novel. But yeah, I'm here to talk about the legal landscape when it comes to AI, generative AI, hot button topic. So I will pass the mic back to Heidi so we can hopefully get you guys to a place where you feel comfortable instead of afraid of AI.
Thank you so much. Like I said, our panelists have really unique perspectives on just how AI, generative AI, is completely changing this industry, both from a business perspective and just in general. So we're going to dig into that, but I do want to draw your attention here to this table that we see. This one, as well as the next one, I don't have a clicker, so if someone can advance it for me, really just kind of outlines how much it has impacted the entertainment industry, and by that I mean AI. We're seeing it across images, videos, audio, you name it, we're starting to see it. And so if you could advance to the next one as well. VIP put out two 30-page reports, around 30 pages for both of them each, over the past couple of months, just breaking down data points, really digging in to AI and how it's impacting entertainment right now. And so in the next slide as well, we have some QR codes to download these. So if you need them and you can't reach the QR code, because I know we're blocking some of them, let us know and we'll try to get those over to you. The first one, of course, generative AI and entertainment, and the second one really digging into IP law. So let's start the conversation. Shane, I kind of want you to help us to put into perspective historically where we are with this new tech, because yes, AI is just rapidly evolving and it's so new, but at the same time it isn't, and we'll adapt to it, right?
Thanks so much. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting when I mentioned a data science-driven venture fund. The founder of that, who was also the chief scientist of that organization, I talked to him about AI. I was like, it's coming, right? And this is 2017 when I joined the fund. And he was like, Shane, it's been here. And I was like, well, what do you mean, Tom? He's like, well, I was the founder, CEO of the first AI company to go public in the United States. So, whoa, yeah, was that was last year? What are you talking about? It's like, no, that was in the 80s, right? So he thinks of this as kind of the third wave of AI, right? So this is not new, right? And historically, I think it's interesting because where we are right now in terms of generative AI, it's super exciting. And the thing that I get so excited about is that it's the mass adoption. In order to do AI well, you need mass amounts of data. And we have a massive amount of humans on this planet right now. And that's what we needed to kickstart this thing and to help it accelerate. And now it is. And of course that comes with fear. Of course it comes with some concerns about what will the results of that be. But we can just look to history, right? I mean, the printing press came along and people thought, well, there's a whole range of jobs that go out now, right? And you can go forward through the Industrial Revolution and other stages where people really thought that, all right, half the population is going to be employed now. Like, this is going to be a problem. Everyone's going to lose their jobs. And it's like, no. New jobs emerge. And what ends up happening are the folks that learn to adopt that technology and merge with it and learn with it. They're the ones that are going to set the future, right? And I think we're in that moment again now with generative AI, where it's a huge opportunity. And that's, I think, where we are right now.
And Jennie, help us understand, just with your expertise and in your role right now, how are you approaching this new wave of AI?
Absolutely. I think it comes from the perspective where you can either lag or lead. And, Rising Sun Pictures is absolutely, we've got a history in innovation and we have chosen to be the leader. about, in 2018, we partnered with the Australian Institute of Machine Learning, and we actually embedded the doctors inside of the studio and said, where do you think AI fits in our pipeline and in our industry? And they have so many ideas. And what it's enabled is the barrier to entry has actually just become available to a lot more creatives. And, you know, with Wonder Labs and Wonder Studios, my kids can now go create TikTok videos and share them with their friends. And so from a creative perspective, that's great because the barrier to entry has you know, declined, and people can actually embrace the technology much more. But there's always going to be the need for further innovation and further pushing of the boundaries and really quality creative output. And so from a business perspective and being an innovator in this area, you know, making sure we bring our artists and our teams along with it. We're educating them in the space of the technology. Our AI team and our artists are getting a shared language between them, so it's not all, you know, rocket science. And I think that's really important. And I think, again, you know, as a theme, I would like to push is to be able to, if jobs change, we as business leaders have to be able to reskill our people. And I don't think there'll ever be the need, and I think it'll just put it in the hands of more creatives as opposed to less creatives. There's always going to be content. It's just going to change forms. And we don't know necessarily what that form is moving into the future, but it is changing. And so therefore, as business leaders, as filmmakers, we need to adapt.
Ghen, help us understand where we are in terms of law, right? How are we approaching Gen AI in general right now? What's the sort of legal framework? I mean, does it keep you up at night that, you know, the government moves so slowly with regulation? Like, what are we seeing right now?
Well, when it comes to regulation, yeah, that would keep me up all night, but I have an 8-year-old, so I'm often exhausted, so I can sleep in the back of the dime. But in general, I think because AI right now is like when the internet first happened, you know, everybody was afraid of it. There was the Wild West, how are we going to regulate? And yes, there's certainly a delay between, at least in the US context, of the US government being able to regulate and being kind of behind because they're so busy being divisive and arguing instead of trying to collaborate and figure out a way to regulate it because it's here, right? We can't put the genie back in the bottle. We were talking earlier at one of the legal panels that I've attended, they mentioned that, you know, in the European Union, they're great at regulation, whereas in the US, we're great at litigation. So it's gonna play out in the courts, but I would urge Congress, you know, who's obviously undergoing a lot of hearings on AI right now, which we can talk about in a minute, but I would urge them to look at the existing frameworks that are out there because the EU has been working on these regulations for years. So I would say they're like 10 years ahead of us, and Canada is probably about 5 years ahead of us, but those frameworks are there. So when you have Cory Booker saying, I don't know how to regulate this is really frightening, you know, I'm worried about what my children are going to be exposed to when they're talking to their Amazon Alexas in their bedroom, you know, we have to look at what's already out there. Why reinvent the wheel, right? We've got to catch up.
Jen, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Italy regulated ChatGPT recently. How is that going to help or hinder them? In your perspective?
Who's them? Italy or ChatGPT?
I guess Italy.
Well, I think it definitely helps ChatGPT. So, you know, OpenAI, they were part of today's hearings, and they were basically begging for Congress, you know, to regulate them because I think they're a little bit afraid of sort of the monster that they've created.
The cat's out of the bag.
Yeah, again, the cat's out of the bag. And certainly here in the US, especially if we're talking in the entertainment industry context, I think we really need to educate everybody in the industry on what exactly AI is. And I mean, it's been here, like Shane was saying, I mean, it's been here since the 80s. And if we understand more about it, we're able to, look at it, figure out how to program it, and regulate it, right? So right now we're still in a, kind of treading water, trying to figure out how close the shore is. But we do have legal frameworks, like the Copyright Office is addressing generative AI and whether or not, you can use generative AI to create, whether, using it as a tool or whether or not it's actually the author of whatever it is that it's created. And that, of course, is at the heart of where we're at right now with the Writers Guild strike, right? They don't want generative AI to be taught by all the copyrighted scripts that are out there because they think it's going to enable copyright infringement.
Okay, so let's shift back over to the business aspect of things. Shane, tell us about how this rapid evolution of AI and generative AI is changing investment strategies for investors. Like, how are investors looking at this space, whether you're a tech investor, media investor? I mean, obviously there's clearly value here. So how are the strategies changing?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this earlier, Heidi, about the difference in some of the past trends we've seen with investors in the tech world to what's happening today. What's happening today is fundamentally a business. The fundamentals of the business are fully there. You have enterprises who are in dire need to use these tools for their business because it's making money. So there's a fundamental business element there. I think when you're betting on cryptocurrencies themselves as a past trend that I think people have looked at, very different animal, right? I think there's fundamentally value that's being created by the blockchain, right? And other types of blockchain related technologies. But the currencies themselves, I mean, that was a lot different kind of speculation. What investors are speculating on now is, will Microsoft do another $1 billion deal for AI tech? You know what the answer is? It's likely, right? Because it's adding value to their clients, right? The folks that I know who are at growth stage startups, tech companies, they're on the Azure cloud, right? Like, we know people who are using the Microsoft implementation of ChatGPT because it's more secure, even though it's a generation behind, right? So investors understand this. Investors are talking to the senior executives at Microsoft and elsewhere and leading the charge. As a result, so many of the companies that we talk to who are, tech companies, tech startups, and they're like, and we're like, okay, what kind of investors can we introduce you to? Like, we're in, we love what you're doing. They're like, well, AI investors. And I'm like, well, all right, like, what do you mean? Like, I know you can use AI in your product and like you'll build some like machine learning into your product, but like, I don't fundamentally think of you as like a AI core company, like in the AI stack. And they're like, but that's what everyone's saying right now, right? Because the companies that are raising money are these large language model companies, right? It's companies in that ChatGPT orbit who are now doing interesting things. An example of a company that I'm super excited about is a company called FedML. Started by a professor, one of my fellow professors at USC, and his PhD student who just recently finished. What they've built is a technology, open source platform, where you can literally go on there, use their technology and their infrastructure to train your AI models on the edge. What does that mean? That means that if I take a picture on my phone for work, and my company says, no, this can't go in the cloud, it's too sensitive, too many privacy regulations enforced by the business on it, I can actually train the AI on my phone without sending the photo up into the cloud. So the training gets sped up, the models get better, but the data is protected. right? That's an enterprise application. It happens to be an open source platform with thousands of people going on, contributing to the library, kind of like a GitHub for machine learning. But those are the kind of companies that I get excited about, that investors are getting excited about. Why? They're selling the shovels and the pickaxes for this AI rush, right? They're not the ones mining for gold and trying to create the cutest AI-driven puppy, right? No, they're literally selling those folks the tools to do that work. Those are fundamentally the companies that investors are leaning into right now, driving up valuations into what I consider to be like really high. But nonetheless, the cash is flowing in there. And I think investors are going to lead that charge because investors can afford to lose some bets. And I think naturally, to your point, I mean, government's going to follow, right? Like, investors are going to take chances to be the first ones in before the regulations are written and before things are legislated in the courts. But we're really eager to see those regulations come in so we know what field we're playing on. We know which way court decisions are going to fall. We want to know, which means we need regulations and we need it to be litigated as well in order for us to have the bigger dollar amounts that go in from an investment standpoint.
Just to pick up on your point, we're waiting for legislation, but I think, again, as business leaders, we have to be understanding about ethical obligations and how we deal with data protection and all those those sorts of things, because it's really important that we maintain that integrity, because I don't think the legislation is actually ever going to catch up, because we've got Moore's law here, and the technology is rapidly advancing. Generative AI is rapidly advancing. How many hundreds of thousands of generative AI tools are there now? And I don't think they'll ever catch up. And I think, like it or not, media and tech are converging, and we need to be able to be mindful of that. And how, where are our places for it in the future?
Jen, help us understand what the writers are worried about right now. We know that they're striking, AI being a major, issue for them. What are they saying, and what do you think will happen, I guess, on the legal side?
So full disclosure, I do represent a few writers who are with the Guild, but I'm not providing legal advice to any of you. I'm just saying that, from what the guilds have been sending out, they're frustrated that in their negotiations with the AMTP, they're refusing to address things like the data sets that are being used to train the AI, because they're concerned about losing their jobs, because ChatGPT can write, the 15th season of Cheers based on being fed scripts from Cheers. But as I said before, it's impossible to put the genie back in the bottle. So the Copyright Office has copies of everything in their registry, and they've been, feeding those data sets to AI. People say, well, under the laws of copyright, that's copyright infringement. But in the US, there is an exception to copyright infringement, which is called fair use. And so most AI companies have said that training with these copyrighted materials is actually a fair use, because it's research, it's education, it's for the betterment of the tool. So I would, had I been asked, I would have encouraged the Writers Guild to, instead of focusing on the inputs, let's focus on the outputs, because that is where the infringement can happen. But you actually want to provide your copyrighted material to the AI, because AI is going to be able to be the ones to identify when infringement has occurred, right? And we can program those AIs to also create a rights management system that could track back and actually provide compensation to the writers for uses of their original source material. So again, with regulation, and I think that we do have a system of checks and balances where fines can be had. I look at the way the music industry, when things started getting put on YouTube. So if I were to upload a picture of or a TikTok of my daughter dancing, to Drake's latest album, it gets hit with a copyright notice, and depending on, your geolocation, some of my family members in the Philippines may not be able to see it because it's copyright infringement in the Philippines to play that particular song, but in the US and Canada, it's fine, right? And if I were to put advertising on that channel, Drake would actually be able to get paid for that. So I think that if we looked at the past and internationally what they're doing with regulation, I think we can, not be so far behind.
Shane, the macroeconomic picture isn't great. A lot of investors sitting on the sidelines with cash. What does the VC investment situation look like in regards to AI? Money's flowing?
Money's flowing.
Tell us more.
I mean, it is. Like I said, I'm seeing a lot of these large language model companies having no trouble raising. And capital is out there, right? It's just seeking a better place to go that's de-risked and has the returns that it needs to meet any interest rate hurdles that are out there, because the interest rate hurdles, right? The interest rates rising create some challenges there. I think one thing I want to just take a step back, right? If we think about, the question of machine intelligence and human intelligence. What we're concerned about right now is the machine intelligence taking the place of humans to some extent, right? Or humans not being compensated for the work they did because AI has disintermediated and obfuscated that. But what I personally believe, having been literally in a data science lab at a San Francisco tech startup, where we had some of the most elite data scientists in the world, and what I learned from those folks is that it's not a question of machine or human. It's a question of what's better, machine, human, or machine and human combined. That is where we're headed. And what gives me hope about that is that collective intelligence and other forms of combined human and machine intelligence actually work better, right? There are things that machines are just naturally better at, right? Storing data. Machines have great memories compared to humans. Humans have an extraordinary ability to process huge amounts of data in real time, right? Think about your sight, your sound, right? The taste, smell, all the things that your brain is able to process is much more sophisticated than a computer, any computer in the world, by far. So when you combine those two things together, that's where we get something interesting. And again, what gives me hope is that oftentimes those collective intelligence models are more auditable. You can actually see why these models are making the decisions that they are, more so than in these black box, straight up machine AI models. So what you can do is you can have this transparency and this auditability, so you can see why the machines are getting to the place they are. Not just seeing the output, but understanding how it got there. That's what we need to be doing, right? And that's what gets me excited about the collective piece, because we can put the two together. And so when I think about the writer's strike, like, okay, honestly, like I don't feel like the writers are gonna be put out of work, because they're gonna be better using this technology to enhance their own creative process, right? What gives me fear is that some of the power brokers or the incumbents might say, you know what? These writers are on their way out. We can negotiate hard. We can beat them up. We don't have to respect them. 6 months later, they're going to realize it was not the case, right? And so that's the piece that gives me fear, is that can we find a way to bridge the gap, right? And honor the fact that we know writers are going to be doing their thing with this technology and without it, But the combining of those things is really going to set a future that I want to live in.
Love it. So we have 1 minute. Jennie, I'm going to put you on the spot. You've been chosen. 6 months, because this technology is moving at light speed. So in 6 months, things are going to look totally different. What do you think this industry will look like with AI as a big component of it?
I think we're going to get disrupted. We already are being disrupted. We're in that moment right now. I think in the last 3 weeks, we've seen so much change already. So I don't know. I just think that the world is in for change, but I think there's going to be terrible fear. And, you know, as I said before, change is a constant process. We're always changing. Filmmakers have changed, you know, all the way throughout history. And I relate it to that moment in time where back in Jurassic Park, especially from a visual effects perspective, because that's where I'm coming from, back in Jurassic Park, there was the the physical models being made for the dinosaurs. And in a moment's notice, they went digital and digital animation. And then basically the models department went out of business. And I think it's not dissimilar to where we're heading now in the creative industry, in filmmaking, especially in visual effects from my background. We're not going out of business, we're not going to change it completely, but there is change occurring, and then we have to be able to retool to adapt to that. Wonder Studios is already creating things where my kids can do it in at home. And so I think it's, you know, it is a case where we have to evolve, and again, we can lag or we can lead. And I think, you know, do you kind of, the genie's out of the bottle, do you go, hey, no? I think the biggest scare is regulatory. I think it's about the legal aspects. I think, you know, we work in slow machines here where I don't know that we're ready to adapt quickly to the legal changes that need to happen and to ensure data protection and those kind of things, and copyright. You know, even using something like Midjourney, make sure you read the license agreement on Midjourney, because if you use those in a film project, you know, are you actually infringing copyright?
Amazing. My thanks to the lovely panelists. Thank you for your insights. And thank you everyone for sticking around. You guys were all so great.